guys, how's it going? Statman coming back at you, and today we're going to talk about The Manchurian Candidate, because I finally watched it, baby! Previously, I had only seen the remake here with Denzel Washington, and I actually thought this one was pretty damn good. And I didn't know whether or not the original would be better or not, but everybody that I talked to said you got to see the original. The original is better. The original, well, that's where they got it from, man. That's yes, you have to see the original. That's the one, man. It's so much better. I, having heard this all my life, figured, yeah, they're probably right, but at the same time, it rung the same. It felt like the same kind of argument that people made when they would say that, well, the book was better, whenever they go to see the movie version of a book or something like that. The book was better. And yeah, usually it is, but it's also something that pretentious people say. So it's like, yeah, but how much better really? So I kind of just cast that off a little bit and said, well, I'll get around to it sometime, right? And so finally, after years of waiting, I did eventually, finally get around to picking up the Criterion edition here of the Manchurian Candidate on Blu-ray. And I watched it, and I gotta say, yeah, in some ways, this is way better than the remake with Denzel Washington here. Way freaking better. I mean, in terms of the filmmaking, in terms of the cinematography, in terms of the message that they're trying to send, the writing, in so many areas, this is definitely the preferable movie. This is preferable movie. This is definitely the better movie, and I absolutely enjoyed it. I loved a lot of the scenes and sequences in this movie, but I did find one thing about this movie lacking where this movie actually did it a little bit better. Hold on, before everybody just starts, how do you dare you, how dare you, ah! Before you go off on that hateful rant, which I completely and totally understand, let me explain, okay? So, the main idea behind this movie is kind of, well, and the story behind it is kind of hampered by the era in which it was written, because they probably couldn't have foreseen exactly how technology would unfold and whatnot. And so a lot of what you see in this movie is based on a lot of like how they achieve mind control and stuff like that is based on like psychological ideas that they had at the time. And you got to remember, this movie was made back in the day when Sigmund Freud was still considered a fairly significant mind in the area of psychology and whatnot. Yeah, it was a little bit rudimentary in comparison to what we know today. And as a result, you go back and watch this now, and it's some of the ideas that they have are just a tad bit, I won't say silly, but they don't necessarily work with what we know today, I don't think. But either way, it's still effective in terms of storytelling, and with the message that it gives, it's incredibly effective and incredibly prescient, incredibly important to watch for what we're seeing in modern times. I mean, some of the lines that I heard in this film struck true based on things that I've been seeing happening in the real world today. So, yeah, I was glad to watch it, especially at the time that I did just recently, within the last month or so, because it really was one of those experiences where you're just sitting there like, oh my God, this is what's happening in the world right now. This is actually happening. Oh, what? How is this? What? No! Although I do, like, this is a psychological thriller, a psychological political thriller. Although I like the psychological aspect of it, and yes, I criticize it a little bit for being, a little outdated, but there's nothing they can do about that because it's a product of its time. But it's not a harsh criticism, because I do like it. It does work. It's, as much as it's a little bit outdated, it's still relevant in a lot of important and serious ways. So, yeah, I did actually really, really enjoy this a lot better than the remake. I gotta say, this is a way better movie than the remake. Hands down, undeniable. However, now I will finally get to the point where I point out the one thing that I think this one gets better, and it's literally only because it's a more modern film and they now know what modern technology looks like, so they can make it more of a movie that is, they make it less of a psychological thriller in terms of all being about psychology and how the human brain works and how you can manipulate it. And they make it more of a science fiction psychological political thriller in some ways, because there are aspects of science fiction to this. The way that they get the brain here to actually do what they want it to do, the way that they get the politician, essentially the Manchurian candidate, to do what they want him to do, it involves science, it involves science fiction, it involves using technology to get it done. And I actually like that aspect of it because that also rings true. I don't necessarily think that they would go to those lengths, the lengths that you see in this movie, but it doesn't seem impossible that they might use technology as it exists today to try and keep people in check. We're seeing that all over the freaking place. Technology being used to keep people in check. That's a really significant thing that's happening in the world right now. And so, in those terms, this movie actually did get it a lot better than this one. However, everything else, aside from Denzel just being the man and being a great actor and running away with the film, everything else was still not very good. It was just, let's just say I will not be picking this up on Blu-ray. I have no desire to see it on Blu-ray. I have no desire probably to see it ever again, but hey, at least I've got the DVD for when I do, when and if I do. I think it's an alright movie. It's like a 6, 7 out of 10, I'd say, maybe. But, and I, like I said, I do like that one technological science fiction aspect to it that they add to the concept. And I feel like it's something that is added in appropriately. But yeah, at the same time, I look at Denzel Washington here kind of taking over the show, and I'm thinking to myself, in this movie, Denzel basically replaces Frank Sinatra. And although I wouldn't say he's as good as Frank Sinatra, I don't know, maybe he's as good as Frank Sinatra, maybe even better. I can't tell you my opinion on that because I frankly don't have an opinion on that. But it's all right if you've got somebody like Denzel or like a notable personality who's capable of like really driving a scene home. It's fine if you have him in this kind of role, but you also need somebody in the main role, the Manchurian candidate role, who can play off of that in a significant way. And I felt like they did that really well in this movie. They actually have them having like a candid conversation and in this movie, and that's at one point the guy breaks down and just kind of puts his head in his hand and just doesn't know how to react. You never really see that from this Manchurian candidate. You don't. Liev Schreiber is not a bad actor, but he didn't really play off of Denzel Washington as well as Frank Sinatra played off of Lawrence Harvey in this movie. It didn't work as well, I felt like, because Liev Schreiber plays a little bit too robotic of a character in this one to be understood. Like, you can understand that because it's to be expected because of the science fiction aspect of it, but you still kind of want to see some sense of humanity to him. You want to see some sense that he is humane in some way, shape, or form. And that, I feel like, is one of the areas where this one just got it so much better. And there is a sense of humanity to Liev Schreiber's interpretation of the character here, but it's just not as human. It's more robotic, more heartless, more soulless almost. Like, the guy looks like a serial killer half the time. And he kind of is, I guess you could say, but It didn't feel like he did quite enough justice to the character to pull it off. I don't know if a better actor would have pulled that off, or if it's just a case of the writing being crappy or the directing being crappy or what. But whatever the case may be, it's just not as good. This movie's just not as good as the original Manchurian Candidate. Very happy to have this on Criterion. Don't really care if I get a better edition of this ever. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on The Manchurian Candidate, original and remake. Overall, glad to have both in my collection so I can compare the two, but like I said, no interest in getting anything better for this one. This is the one I'll be watching again. This I'll be watching again more than the other. So, yeah. Gotta say, although, like I said, I do like the science fiction aspect of the remake a little bit more, it also hampers the movie in a lot of significant ways that you don't really see in this one. So, yeah, it's cool. It's an interesting concept for this one, but the original, all the way. Original all the way. Anyways, that'll do it for me today. Thanks for watching, you guys. Catch you later. Peace.